Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Hope you all are fine and enjoying your life. Today we are going to start lecture number 3 from reading selection 1.3. It's a poem, namely September, the first day of school, and it's written by Howard Numerov. I am Sumera Zahir from Army Burnhal College for Girls. First of all, I have brought this title page because so many girls were asking about the book. There is some problem buying the book. So this is your English book with the title. It's okay if the title is different, though that makes no difference. But you must look at this like the book is published by Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Textbook Board, Peshawar. I have brought the contents as well for your sake. If the contents are same, so then the title makes no difference. The title can be different, but the contents should be in this sequence. You can check it. It's first flight, first year at Harrow, first day of school, its country for me, our environment, tears of nature, the blanket, the way it was, the most merciful, beautiful flower, the scholarship jacket, a long walk home, be the best, fly away, the man who was a hospital when I am an old lady, finding a job, a stressful job, writing formal letters, writing resume CVs, making an appointment at the reception, dental checkup, dental hygiene, Damon and Pithyas. Before starting our poem, I would like to discuss poetry with you. Poetry is a literary work in which the expression of feelings and ideas is given intensity by the use of distinctive style and rhythm. Poetry or poems is a genre of literature, as there are other genres as well. You know it, prose and drama. Poetry is the third genre of literature. There are three main kinds of poetry: narrative, dramatic and lyrical. Rhyme is most important part of a poem. When something rhymes, it has usually two words that have similar end sounds. Another important characteristic is the use of stanza. Like all the poems are usually divided into stanzas. Stanzas are a mean of separating different ideas or sections within a poem. A stanza lets the reader know that a specific set of images should be read together to make meaning from the text. The third characteristic of poetry is the use of different forms or patterns. A paraphrase is a restatement of a passage using other words. Like when you are asked to paraphrase the stanza, then usually you are supposed to bring your own words or different words, not the words which are used by the poet. In paraphrase, we are supposed to explain the given lines only and have to consider ourselves as if we are the poet. Like when you are explaining or when you are paraphrasing the given lines, so you are to like paraphrase in such a manner as if you are the poet and you are explaining it in the words of poet. In paraphrase, we cannot use the phrase the poet says that. Usually this is used when you are explaining or with reference to the context. Rather, we will say I think or I see, as if you are the poet who is explaining the given lines. When the division of a poem is irregular and unrhymed, it is called a strophe. As this poem which is coming before you, September, the first day of school, here the division is irregular and unrhymed, and so obviously it is divided into strophes, not stanza. We will not call it stanza, we will call it strophe. The term is used for stanza that does not have a regular meter and rhyme or pattern. An allusion is a reference to some historical, political, social, or religious, literary figure or event which is used to embellish the poem. Like when you are giving a reference to something, that is an allusion in poetic language. Let's discuss Nemirov Howard, the poet, was born on February 29, 1920, New York City, New York, US. He died on July 5th, 1991, at the age of 71. His occupation, he served at University Missouri, and his occupation was poet. He was a poet, a writer. Nemirov is an American poet, novelist, short story writer, critic, and playwright, and winner of many awards. He is a skillful intellectual poet employing a variety of traditional verse forms, whose poetry is especially distinguished as an attempt to come to terms with the hard science as well as the psychology of our age. First of all, summary of the poem, like what is the poem about? The poem is about a father and his son. The author himself has depicted the poet depicted himself as the father in this poem. He narrates the complex feelings of a father who is taking his son to school. It reminds him of his own first day at school. He is worried about his leaving him alone, like leaving his son alone there, but at the same time hopes for a great kindness coming out of it in the end. Like obviously when you go to school, to ultimately when you come back, to you become a learned person, or you can call yourself learned or cultured or educated. So this is the kindness he is thinking about. Only if the child finds father-like figures. Father-like figures here means like good teachers who would consider him like their own son, or father-like figures can also be like parent-like figures among his teachers, like the teachers should be behaving like parents. In the first strophe, the author tells us how the father takes his child to school, how the child cries. Usually the children, they always cry when they are taken to school for the first time. A little, but then lets go of his father's hand. The father also has tears in his eyes. He recalls the day when his father took him to school. In the second strophe, we see the father falling into thinking about children at school and how they have to endure whatever goes on in the school, good or bad. He refers to the stuff children learn. Stuff here means like so many subjects children have to learn at school, as unreasonable and authoritative, before which everything has to bow down. Like here he means to say that a child is forced to study all the subjects, and like he is always forced to bow down. Here means to be very obedient in front of the teachers and always say yes to whatever they say. In the third strophe, the speaker alludes. I have given the definition of allusion in the beginning, that it is a kind of reference to any story, to any incident in the history. So it alludes to the biblical story of Prophet Joseph, Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, and his dream which won him the hatred of his brothers. Like Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam witnessed a dream in which he saw that all the stars and sun and moon, they are bowing before him, and when he narrated the dream to his father, to his step brothers, they felt hatred for him and they got envious of him, they got jealous of him. So Joseph suffered because of his dream, but great kindness came of it in the end. Like his brothers, they threw him into a well, like afterwards he became the king of Egypt. In the fourth strophe, the speaker thinks of his own child again, who has entered the classroom. He thinks about what would become of his son after years. Like he's thinking now, this is his very first day. He's entering the school. Like later on, after many years, obviously he'll pass out from there, and he'll become. Then what would he become? He's thinking about that. He hopes for his son, but does not know the exact outcome. Like he's not sure what he is going to become after many years. He hopes that his son will find father-like figures among his teachers. Again, he hopes he should be having very good teachers who are just like his own parents. In the last two lines, the speaker says that tears shed at such time are ceremonial. Like I'm shedding tears, the poet says. Like these tears are just ceremonial, like not feeling sorry for him. It's all according to the ritual or ceremony, that this is according to the tradition, that when a child goes to college, obviously the parents, they also feel bad, and they usually they have tears in their eyes. And then he says these are all selfish tears, but he hopes for the great kindness that may come at the end, just as in Joseph's case, like just as Yusuf alayhi salam was made the king. Later on, before he was sold, he was thrown into the well by his brothers, and then some caravan people picked him up, and then they sold him in Egypt. Like later on, in same country, he became the king. September, the first day of school poem explanation. Usually in our federal board, you do not get reference to the context questions, but still I have brought it. If such question comes before you, so you should be able to explain it with reference to the context. Here is the stanza-wise explanation of the poem. The general things like reference and the context of the poem have been given below. You will write the same reference, like the reference will always be the same and the context will always be the same for each stanza. For example, these lines have been taken, this is the reference from the poem September, the first day of school, written by Howard Neumroff, and the context is, reference always gives the name of the poem and name of the poet, and context usually tells us about what is the poem about, or what is the theme of the poem, or what is the subject of the poem. This poem represents the point of view of parents. The poem is the expression of mixed emotions of a father and his son when they go to school on the first day of his son's schooling. The poem also describes an outcome of a general education. The poet has divided the poem into two concept-based segments. The first part of the poem describes the emotions of father and son, and the second part discusses the purpose of school and education. The poem has beautifully portrayed the feelings, expectations, and hopes of the father. The father remembers his own past and recalls his own first day of school when his father went to leave him to school. So here we begin with the first stanza. My child and I hold hands on the way to school, and when I leave him at the first grade door, he cries a little but is brave. He does let go. My selfish tears remind me how I cried before the door a long life ago. I may have had a hard time letting go. If you notice the last words of the lines, there is no same sound here, like school, door, does, how, ago. There is no same sound. That's why it's called a strophe. Now explanation of this stanza. In these lines, the narrator, as a father taking his son to school for the first time, is depicted. The first image that the reader encounters is that of the narrator and his son walking to school holding hands in hands, creating powerful image of familial unity, family life. This familial unity is immediately worried by the image and is soon troubled as the narrator's son eventually lets go of his father's hand and walks into his classroom. The poet, as a father, is impressed by the bravery and boldness of his son. The son is brave and he cries a little, but then lets him go with great courage. The father, the poet, remembers his own first day of school when he had really hard time letting his father go. That is why the father also has tears in his eyes. Additionally, the enjambment at the end of the third line signifies the forced separation that must occur. This is third line. This one. Occur between father and son in order for both of them to go on. Just as the line stop unnatural and forced, so is the separation between father and son. After discussing his son's difficulties in separating from his father, the narrator discusses his own experiences as a student starting out in the first grade. He notes, "Selfish tears remind me how I cried before that door." Like the father is also remembering his past or his very first day in school long while ago, and he remembers that he also cried that day when he was about to join the school life. It is clear that he is crying just like his son, but these tears are not in sympathy with his son. The father and the son are at once united by their mutual experience of going through schooling, but at the same time realizing the distance between them. There is indeed a lifetime separating them from one another, but the experience they go through is essentially the same. Even though what his son feels is nearly identical to what he felt at his son's age, the narrator cannot help his son, and the narrator's son has to be alone in his schooling. Obviously, when you are sent to school, so you have to cope with it all alone, all by yourself. No parent can accompany you in the arena of school life. Second strophe, second stanza. Each fall the children must endure together, but every child also endures alone. Learning the alphabet, the integers, 3 dozen bits and pieces of a stuff, so arbitrary, so peremptory, that worlds invisible and visible. Each fall here means the winter season. Usually the classes commence in the winter season. In these lines, the poet tells of what is to come in the classroom, like what is the student going to do in the classroom. Obviously, he'll be taught so many subjects by the teachers. How each child's learning experience will take on its own perspective, and obviously each child's learning experience is different from the other. The narrator furthers this idea of solitude in unity in the following stanza as he states, "Each fall the children must endure," like they must bear together, "but every child also endures alone," like they are alone, lekin they are living together as well. So one child is bearing something, so obviously all will bear the same experience. The author has a momentary display of his own authority of having gone through this by using the word so arbitrary, so peremptory, in a way that this is his way of showing off that he has gone through the experience of acquiring an education, like he had attained education in the same manner the way his son is attaining. He knows what his son and his classmates will be learning, even if they might not know it yet themselves. He knows more about their educational future than the kids know, yet he has to allow every single one of these students to experience life on their own and stand idly by waiting for his son to stop crying. At the same time, the words peremptory and arbitrary become an expressive metaphor for life. Both the narrators as well as his sons and his son's friends and people in general, like everybody has to attain education. Life is indeed peremptory. You are not certain what is going to happen, but we are all in need to make our own mistakes to figure it out. The individual experience of going through school, leading one's own way through life, and making one's own mistakes is invaluable and cannot be substituted. Third strophe. Bow down before it as in Joseph's dream. The sheaves bowed down, and then the stars bowed down before the dreaming of a little boy. The dream got him such hatred of his brothers as cost the greater part of life to mend, and yet great kindness came of it in the end. Here the writer is giving us the allusion, the reference to the story of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam. So like when he saw or he witnessed a dream, and in his dream he saw that all the things, all the stars, the sun and the moon, they are bowing down before him, and the sheaves, everything is bowing down before him. So what happened, like this dream made him to get the hatred of his brothers, because they got envious and jealous of him, and caused him but afterwards, later on, he got a good result, a good prize of that dream. Or let's do the explanation. Stanza 3, a biblical reference is there. The it in this stanza, this it refers to the stuff of the previous stanza. Bow down before it, it refers to the previous line. In these lines, the poet has described the purpose and importance of education in life. The poet says the education his son will get will be as important and purposeful as world will perceive it. The general views of the people about education affect the learning of the boy. The perception of the world and the meaning that it attaches to the education may bring negative reactions. As Joseph or Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, his brothers were jealous of him just because they perceived his dream and his attachment with their father fatal for them. So their reaction was the result of their perceptions. The rest of his life, Joseph tried to mend the loss. He always suffered the painful memories of his childhood and paternal and family life and affection, like how he was betrayed by his brothers, and how he was thrown into the well by his brother, how he was sold in the bazaar or market of Egypt, and how, like, whatever happened with him, how he was thrown in the prison as well. And yet it all turned into kindness, like later on he got the prize of it and he became the king of whole kingdom of Egypt. The poet has tried to make us realize that as Joseph became the victim of hatred of his brothers just because the misperception, the world can give a negative reaction to what his son is going to learn in the school, but ultimately his son will serve the world and humanity with the very education what he is going to get there. Strophe, stanza number 4. My child has disappeared behind the schoolroom door, and should I live to see his coming forth, a life away? I know my hope, but do not know it. May the fathers he finds among his teachers have a care of him more than his father could. How that will look, I do not know. I do not need to know. In these lines, the poet has described his own feelings after leaving his child at school. When his son had gone behind the classroom door, he felt sad and hopes to see his son again, well educated and groomed and cultured and literate. The author's choice of words indicates the pain that he experienced after being separated from his son. Uttering the words, my child has disappeared, is a nightmare of sorts for any parent. But the narrator's choice of these words is in no way accidental. The lines prior to this declaration seem to serve the function of convincing the narrator of the importance of his son's education. Thus, the narrator seems to be listing a series of things that he learned in school in order to convince himself that the pain of separation from his son must be endured for the greater benefit of his son. Like, it's okay, today I'm feeling the pain of separation of my son, but afterwards this pain will be converted into a great benefit when my son will come out of college or school after a long time. Definitely he'll be a very prosperous and literate person at that time. He's imagining this thing. The lines following the narrator's declaration of his son's disappearance convey the pain and sorrow that the author is experiencing and allow the readers to gain a better understanding of what the narrator is going through. He declares, and I should live, like inshallah, I'll be living after when my son will be completing his studies. He's imagining this thing, or he's foreseeing the future after 10 or 20 years when he'll be coming out of college with a degree, or when he'll be graduating from this college. So I hope I would be there to see him. I must be alive. He's imagining this thing. Last lines. Even our tears belong to ritual, tradition, or ceremony, or all these things. But may great kindness come of it in the end. These are the two lines of the poem. The poet says that our tears are just a rite or ritual or ceremonial. The poet has tried to overcome the feelings of sorrow and pain by saying this. The poet has tried to show that it is normal to leave our children to others to teach. Yet our tears are not ritual. We cannot leave our children on unknown hands. The best pace of their security and safety is in our own hands. We do this to our children as our parents did it to us, and it is truly horrid, ripping, no matter how we prepare ourselves and how much confidence we have in our schools and in our children or in our child. It is a societal ritual where all parents symbolically surrender their children to society, and all children accept that they will need to face the challenges of institutions without the protective gaze of their parents. He knew education and academia, and he does not offer an unconvincing declaration like, "This is for the best," or "Education will expand their worlds," or even "They will increase their earning power if they make the right choices." Now paraphrase is before you. Mostly in your exams you have paraphrase comes in the board exams. You have to paraphrase the given lines, and while paraphrasing you have to explain the lines only, and as if you are the you yourself you are the the poet. You explain the lines as if you are the poet. Here is the stanza-wise paraphrase of all stanzas of the poem. Stanza number 1, commencing from "My child and I up till time letting go." Simply you will explain the lines, "My son," like the poet is saying, na? "My son and I proceed to school, holding each other's hand on the way, and when I leave him at door of first grade classroom, he cries for a while, but he is brave and bold, he let me go. My selfish tears remind me how bitterly I had wept before the same door long time ago. I may have tough time to leave my son in school." Stanza number 2. Each fall the children down up till down before it. The children have to get tough, and it's not rough, it's tough, and face whatever goes on in the school together, either good or bad. Every child has to tolerate his or her difficulties alone. Learning is very valuable but not easy. It is unconditional to learn the alphabets, for example A, B, C, D, all the alphabets, and the figures, all the integers like 1, 2, 3. There are 26 alphabets and 10 digits. Beside these, a number of other things, either visible or cannot be seen, are there. Like there are so many other activities or so many other subjects are also taught in the school. The process of learning is random and so commanding that seen and unseen worlds are They are all are bow before it. Stanza number 3. As Joseph's dream up till of it in the end. As Joseph saw in a dream that bundle of wheat and stars are bowing before him, he was a little boy at that time. When his brothers came to know about his dream, all of them began to hate him, and they got envious of him, and they got jealous of him. The greater part of his life was spent to fix the complicated relations. I have told you the story of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam. My child has disappeared up till not need to know. My son has disappeared behind the door of classroom. Should I hope to live to see him coming out after completing his school? Maybe it take years, but I know what I wish him to be. I'm not sure about his outcome of success. I hope that my son will find father-like figures among his teachers who will take care of him. I do not know how he will look, and I do not need to know. Last lines. Even our tears up till in the end, even the tears that we shed, lack true spirit and sincerity. It is just a custom. I pray that great kindness may come of it in the end. I hope you have understood the poem. You are going to enjoy it. Till next lecture, goodbye. Take good care of yourself. Allah Hafiz.